Okay, so this is the fourth video about the children's farm. We have Steve here, who's absolute fixture on the farm, does heaps of stuff, and he also does media, and he's filming Sim, who is one of the market gardeners here, or gardeners. And we're going to talk about, as I said with Connor earlier, the potential for this area to become a market garden and what's going on here. Actually, I'll just talk about whatever they like, and I'm just going to stand back and let it rip.
Ready when you are, Steve. Cool. So here we have the barn paddock, which has often been used for some of our beautiful animals that we've got here. But in the farm's new direction, I suppose, we're looking to have more food production and some more focus on market gardening and or vegetable production particularly, but maybe also some flowers and other crops that we can get in here. I'm thinking about this paddock as food. So for me, when I see this grass, I actually see a lot of weed pressure. Currently we've got some mallow and some cooch and kikuyu and some other grass species, some purslane, which some restaurants in Melbourne are selling for quite a dime, and it's just a weed that's going around. But this is kind of a bit of a weed bank, and so we've recently got a couple of electric fences that the animals don't touch because they're scared of it, and we're using it to create little cells, and those cells is kind of condensing the animals into a smaller patch. If we open up the whole paddock, or if you think of larger properties that have huge expanses without fencing, the animals always go for sort of like the sugar. They go for the best on the plate. So what we want to do is condense that space to be much smaller, and then we're forcing the animals to have, in some ways, a more varied diet. And Daphne there doesn't really like the mallow, which is a kind of a hardier species growing here quite in a thick stand that's still quite tall, whereas she's gone for the other things. But as she stays there for a couple more days, she'll keep mowing it down and essentially using the animals as mowers. And my hope is that we'll bring in some even smaller sections, maybe only 16 meters squared or so with some temporary fencing. And we're going to put 4 sheep in there, and we're going to keep moving those cells along. And so that's called rotational grazing or cell grazing. There's various different names for it. But one of the benefits of that is that as grasses kind of grow, they tend to, the more often they get nibbled, as a grass can have a thick stand, the animal's going to nibble it down, and then next week a new fresh shoot's going to come up, and the animal's going to see this perfect green pasture, green shoot, and it's going to go for it because it's probably high in sugars or whatever it is. And that process, as it keeps on happening and happening, the root level, you could kind of say, is acting in accordance with what's happening above. So as it keeps getting chopped down, the root keeps getting smaller. And the roots are actually a really important part of the living soil component of what's happening in the paddock and or happening everywhere, in terms of that's what's feeding the sugars and the exudates, and I'm not too sure on all the technical terms, but the roots are a really important part. It's not just what's growing above. We really need to think about what's below this topsoil sort of layer. So I'm also thinking that all these weeds, in some ways, if we can get them down to a really short stand, that root mass, hopefully, we can also get to break down and be a whole bunch of organic matter, and then all our microbes and soil biology is going to come through and break that down even further, and we're going to get this lovely soil structure, and from that we're going to get really sweet carrots eventually. But this is just looking at the patch of grass. So my thinking is, we're going to get the animals in here, we're going to get them to mow down the grass as quickly as possible over the next couple of weeks, and then we're actually going to, rather than plant carrots or something directly, we're thinking about, can we improve the soil structure even further and get maybe a cover crop? So cover crops kind of, I like introducing a field that we have the benefits of building soil structure. Maybe it's about fixing nitrogen. If we've got certain selection species, we might do a mixed cover crop with a bunch of different species. In the paddock to my left, I've put in some field, some tillage daikon, or even what's the big cylindrical root one?
Turnip?
Yeah, it's like a turnip, but anyway.
Sweet.
It's a really large daikon. Yeah, anyway, there's different types of, and that'll actually break up some of the soil compaction as well. And if we let it to rot, it's bringing up phosphorus, or it might be bringing up potassium. And if the animal can eat the top part, and then it's bringing up subsoil nutrients to come up into this top layer, which is where we then want to sort of grow our veggies and bring up and recycle nutrients. So we're always thinking about how to recycle nutrients on the farm, and farmers, really that's their job, is not so much always, it's you want to get an output, but you also want to look at the soil as sort of the bank of what we're actually farming. Anyway, I'm getting a bit distracted.
Question.
Yes.
If we wanted a market garden in here tomorrow,
Yeah.
why wouldn't we just come in and just spray this paddock and rip it up with a plough?
Yeah, sure. So farmers and people can do that, and we could do that. We could come in and spray. We're going to try and preference always like an organic or a kind. The river's also just down here with the Yarra. It's not to say that you can't spray, but there's a whole bunch of reasons. Maybe me personally, I'm going to preference doing a different strategy, and we've got that in our toolbox. We can do that. So I suppose following the organic approach rather than spraying, we could use tarps to block the sunlight and block all the ability for plants to photosynthesize. Another way, we could sheet mulch, and at home people are welcome to use like a no-dig method where you might lay compost or you might lay a thick layer of cardboard or some other material that's going to break down. And we could do that here too, and we might use some of those methods. I'm really interested to see actually us trial different types of agricultural methods to turn this into a market garden. So if we wanted tomorrow, I think we would get a rotary hoe, we'd mix all, and I've actually already started this, I did it last week. I brought in a rotary hoe, I'm trying one pass, in 2 weeks time I'm going to rotary hoe again, and all those grasses are going to try and pick back up, and then the third time I'm actually going to rotary hoe again, and then after that I might bring in cardboard, or I might put down a thick layer of compost, and we could plant directly into that. And hopefully those plants, we would choose a species that's so competitive that it could start to outcompete. However, we'd still need to bring in volunteers or a lot of man or woman power to take out the extra strands that are coming if we want to get rid of some of those invasive species like cooch or kikuyu. Does that answer your question? There's so many different ways to tackle this. So yeah, we're thinking about trying not to disturb too low in the soil structure as well, because the soil is this really complex biology, soil food web. There's chemistry going on here, there's the physical component of it. We need to get the moisture level right. I'm now just ranting, but let's go with animals. Then we're going to try and maybe even come in with a mechanical mower, and then after that we will probably bring a rotary hoe in, mix and get that sort of style, seeing some bare ground. We'll sow some oats that we've got on hand, and that's going to be a nice stand of oats that we can have for animals in spring. And then after that, which has created some of our good soil structure, we'll come in, slash it, and then probably either use weed mat and or use a species of crop that's so competitive to sort of get rid of the species we don't want.
And so Sim,
Whoa.
I think it's so fascinating, and it's actually fantastic seeing the the cells here, or the, what did you call it before, like having the strip, strip grazing, yeah. But it is so difficult to, cooch particularly is such a long-term problem as a perennial grass. So I mean, I think if you don't want to spray it out, then trying these different methods is so important, like we were saying earlier, in terms of just being very transparent about what you're trying to do so that others can learn from that, right?
And to see whether it succeeds or also if it fails.
Yeah, and of course, if you want to have crops, particularly if you're starting off, that do the smothering, pumpkins, sweet potatoes, happy to help at any point.
Oh, sweet potatoes. Yeah, great. There's so many different ways we can go about it as well. And there's flame weeding too, that's an organic method, which sounds aggressive, but it's actually one of the less aggressive methods.
Which is, what was that?
Like bringing in a flame torch.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Just singeing, and you can even do pre-emergent flame weeding to try and trick weeds to pop up, and then we could tarp or we could flame weed, and then plant and also use weed mat. And this will be a structural process over the next year or two.
Yeah.
And then hopefully after that, our weed strategy is on point, that we actually, weeding becomes so much like a walk in the park every couple of weeks. We just come through with a wheel hoe or whatnot.
Just out of interest, with tag paddock here, the little holding pen. I mean, obviously it's smaller, but you had the pigs in, or a pig in, to do a lot of that rooting around for you, literally.
Yeah.
Do you think it was successful?
That's almost like we're looking at
Same
this,
principle,
and
really.
Same here. We were just hoping to get. We had Maybell, one of our pigs, in there
Yeah.
for a few weeks, and then she's gone through and really like sort of done the animal tractor method, really.
Yeah.
And after that, we brought in some compost, put in sort of beds that I tend to use, in 75 centimeters wide, and we've planted a bunch of direct seeded crops with a seeder. So
Yeah.
the seeder drops seed like a wagon wheel almost,
Right.
but it becomes very precise. And so the
Yeah.
spacing of that crop should hopefully outcompete some of our other weeds. And so then there's less work to do, and we can manage much larger sections. Than the
And
average
if you had a
do.
yes, if you had an actual chicken tractor, or like a portable chicken coop, would you use that in barn paddock here? If that was
We also need to get our crop selection. So there's issues with like a cooling off period with manure.
sure.
But yes, chicken tractors work. You
Yeah.
just need to have a system of keeping the food safe
Yeah.
as well, and choosing that crop or variety, or maybe that could be done in our flour production, which we're also hoping to sort of increase.
What are your thoughts now, just very quickly, I guess, on crop selection? Because your stall out the front here has been fascinating. You've been selling quinces and figs, and then some of your more kind of annual crops, or seasonal crops like kale. Again, I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but do you think you'd have a mix here of things that maybe some perennial things, or you think always mostly in the long term high turnover Asian veg?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I suppose at the farm, it's got a lot of moving parts, and there's a bit of we need to choose selections that we're going to be able to work with for the staff time,
Yeah.
and or volunteers, and also that our customers. There's no point growing something if no one's going to eat it.
Yeah.
And so part of that becomes easiness to grow, market demand, how quick it is. Sometimes it's thinking about profit, but in this context, it's actually more about engagement and showing people the potential of urban ag, and or volunteering opportunities and education, all that. So I'm thinking about reducing our crop selection to maybe 4 to 6 veggies and getting good at those things, and then moving on as we expand. Because as we have rows, most likely going down here, slowing the water as it comes down, we might have, say, 4 rows of rhubarb, and think about a perennial sort of crop that we could do, and also put weed mat or straw.
Yeah.
It becomes quite a simple task that we can get lots of people to
Right.
come, and the farm might be known for its rhubarb. That would be a lovely sort of thing. Whereas then we'll also do some of our salad production stuff that might be more money making and high turnover, or Asian greens like bok choy. And then after that, we might have flower production, because we also think about the aesthetic, and that flowers are a beautiful addition to this space too.
I just love that idea of specialist crops that a farm becomes famous for.
Yeah.
And it kind of links into that idea of terroir. Which
What's terroir?
Terroir is it's a real wine snob term, meaning that a particular wine from a particular region reflects the earth, like literally the terroir, right?
Yeah, well, the taste of our rhubarb should be different than what
exactly.
Part of it. Shall we move into the barn paddock, only because this man wants to do some work?
Well, I'll actually. Thanks so much, Sim. I'll probably come back, but this is for my students.
Yeah.
So hi. So that was Sim. This was Steve, and thanks a lot, guys.